3 more conspiracy theories that were proven to be true. You've probably heard the phrase, history is written by the victors, right? Well, sometimes history is written by those in power who want to control the narrative, and we, the public, are left with the version they want us to believe. But what if some of those official stories weren't exactly what they seemed? What if the truth was hidden, buried beneath layers of deception and manipulation? Today, I want to take you through 3 stories that might sound like conspiracy theories, but have actually been proven to be true. These are stories of manipulation, cover-ups, and dark secrets that were revealed long after they should have been. So let's dive into these incredible stories that show just how far some people are willing to go to shape the world around them, and how, eventually, the truth always finds its way to the surface. Theory 1. The Gulf of Tonkin Incident in the Vietnam War. It was August of 1964, and the world was on the brink of a new chapter in its ongoing saga of Cold War tension. The United States was knee-deep in its struggle to contain the spread of communism, and the Vietnam War seemed to be the next battleground. The public was told a simple story. North Vietnam had attacked U.S. Navy ships in the Gulf of Tonkin, an unprovoked act of aggression. It sounded like a classic case of a country fighting to defend itself. The U.S. military was supposed to be in the right, ready to fight back and protect its interests. That story was used to justify the escalation of the Vietnam War. The Gulf of Tonkin Resolution was passed almost immediately, and President Lyndon B. Johnson was given the green light to send thousands of American soldiers to fight in Southeast Asia. The Vietnam War would go on for years, dragging the U.S. into a conflict that would result in over 58,000 American deaths, millions of Vietnamese lives lost, and a nation divided. But here's the twist. As is often the case with these things, the truth was far more complicated and far darker than what we were told. Decades later, thanks to declassified government documents, we learned that the second attack, the one that was the foundation of the official story, never actually happened. It was completely fabricated. The first attack, too, was heavily exaggerated. The ships involved, the USS Maddox and the USS Turner Joy, never really came under fire the way the government had claimed. It was all based on faulty intelligence, miscommunication, and frankly, a lot of lies. At the time, the second attack was presented as an undeniable fact. The government was saying that U.S. ships had been attacked once, and then, in an even more dangerous second assault, the North Vietnamese had hit them again. That second assault, though, didn't happen. Instead, it was a mix-up of radar data, poor communication, and false reports being sent back to Washington. The men aboard those ships didn't see any enemy ships at all. They reported this, but the official narrative didn't want to hear it. And here's where it gets even more shocking. The U.S. government knew about this fabrication, but still used the false narrative to escalate the war. The public was fed a story of danger and aggression that simply wasn't true. This deception led to the Vietnam War, one of the most tragic conflicts in modern history. The war wasn't just a result of ideological differences, it was built on a lie, one that cost countless lives. The full scope of the manipulation was only made clear in the mid-2000s when the National Security Agency's reports were declassified. These reports confirmed that the second attack, the one used to justify the war, had never happened. It was a constructed crisis, a deliberate attempt to manipulate public opinion and push the U.S. into a conflict it might otherwise have avoided. Theory 2. Operation Paperclip. Now, let's fast forward to the end of World War II. The war is over, but a new conflict begins: the Cold War. The US and the Soviet Union are locked in a battle for global dominance. The Cold War isn't fought with bullets or bombs as much as it is fought with ideology, technology, and intelligence. The United States, in particular, was determined to outpace the Soviets in every possible field, including military advancements and space exploration. In this race for dominance, the U.S. government turned to a controversial strategy, one that would forever alter the course of history: Operation Paperclip. The idea behind the operation was simple: recruit the best and brightest minds from Nazi Germany to help the U.S. advance its technological capabilities. The only catch? Many of the scientists the U.S. brought in had been deeply involved in the Nazi regime's horrific war efforts, including the creation of weapons used in bombings and even concentration camps. But the U.S. turned a blind eye to their past, willing to overlook their involvement in war crimes for the sake of scientific expertise. One of the most infamous figures brought in through Operation Paperclip was Wernher von Braun, a brilliant engineer who had been instrumental in designing the Nazi 5-2 rockets. These rockets were used to terrorize cities across Europe. Yet after the war, von Braun was welcomed into the U.S. with open arms. He was given a leading role in the U.S. Army's rocket program, and eventually, he became one of the key figures behind the U.S. space program. Von Braun and his team were instrumental in developing the technology that would eventually put a man on the moon. But here's the kicker: the U.S. government not only ignored these scientists' Nazi affiliations, but also provided them with new identities and erased their pasts. These men were responsible for some of the most brutal aspects of the Nazi war machine, yet their records were erased, and they were treated as heroes of the U.S. space program. The full scope of Operation Paperclip wasn't revealed until decades later, and when it was, it sparked a fierce debate about the moral implications of the U.S. government's actions. Sure, these scientists helped the U.S. make huge strides in military technology and space exploration, but at what cost? Many of them had been complicit in some of the most unspeakable war crimes of the 20th century. The program raised serious questions about how far governments are willing to go in the pursuit of power and technological supremacy. Theory 3. The Dreyfus Affair. Now, let's move across the ocean to France, where one of the most famous cases of judicial injustice unfolded: the Dreyfus Affair. This is the story of a man named Alfred Dreyfus, a French army officer who was falsely accused of treason in the late 1800s. The accusations were based on flimsy evidence, a forged document that was later proven to be a lie. But Dreyfus's life was destroyed anyway, and he was sentenced to life imprisonment on the brutal French penal colony known as Devil's Island. At first glance, it seems like just another case of military incompetence or even a random miscarriage of justice. But what made this case truly horrifying was the way it highlighted deep-rooted political corruption and rampant anti-Semitism within the French military establishment. Dreyfus was a Jewish officer, and it was clear that many in the military were more interested in preserving their reputations and clinging to their prejudices than in seeking the truth. Dreyfus became a scapegoat, the perfect target for a conspiracy that was determined to cover up the military's own mistakes. Despite the fact that the evidence against him was thin, Dreyfus was convicted and publicly humiliated. But here's where the story takes an even darker turn. Dreyfus was not the real traitor. It turned out that the true culprit was a man named Ferdinand Esterhazy, another officer in the French army. But the military didn't want to admit they were wrong. Instead, they doubled down, choosing to protect Esterhazy and let an innocent man rot in prison rather than own up to their mistakes. The case sparked outrage, especially after a famous writer, Émile Zola, published his groundbreaking article, J'accuse. Zola's piece exposed the corruption within the French military and demanded justice for Dreyfus. The article caused a massive public outcry, and eventually, the truth came to light. Dreyfus was exonerated, but not before years of suffering, not just for him, but for France as a nation. The Dreyfus affair revealed the deep divisions in French society, where anti-Semitism, political power, and military pride created a perfect storm of injustice. But it also highlighted the courage of a few individuals who fought for the truth, even when it seemed like the entire system was against them. These three conspiracy theories, once dismissed as impossibilities, have all been proven to be true. Whether it's the manipulation behind the Gulf of Tonkin Incident, the ethical compromises of Operation Paperclip, or the wrongful conviction and eventual exoneration of Alfred Dreyfus, these stories reveal just how deep the roots of conspiracy go. They expose the hidden forces that shape history, often at great cost, and remind us that the truth is not always as clear as it seems. Always question the narratives that are presented to you, for history, as these examples show, is often more complicated than we are led to believe.